People's Business is made possible by our partners, Solar Dynamics, the most efficient energy systems.
Good night and welcome to another edition of The People's Business. I'm your host, Shane Seeley, and this evening we continue with our discussion on from last week. So this is part 2 to Fisheries, the way forward for the industry. Really, that's what we are examining again today. We covered a lot of topics and a lot of ground last week. We're going to move on this week. There are a number of other issues that we want to delve into with our guests this evening. We have back with us a similar cast, only one dropout this week. Dr. Shelly-Ann Cox is back with us. She is the Chief Fisheries Officer. Henderson Inniss, a boat owner, back with us again. And Augustine Forde, Managing Director of Just Fish. Vernel Nicholls, she could not be with us this evening. She had another engagement, but stick around. We have a lot of robust discussion about the fisheries industry. We'll delve into that right here on The People's Business. Don't go anywhere. Back with you on The People's Business as we discuss fisheries, the state of the industry, the way forward. With us tonight again, Dr. Shelly-Ann Cox, Chief Fisheries Officer, Henderson Inniss, a boat owner, and Augustine Forde, the Managing Director of Just Fish. So we want to continue our conversations on from last week, and we're going to give our callers an opportunity to chime in earlier this week as well, because there were a number of questions. We had a number of callers that did not get in. So just for you viewers, those numbers to call: 228-5562, 228-5563. So we're going to look at some other elements of the industry this week, and we want to get the youth involved as well. And when I say get the youth involved, we're examining what is being done to get young people to continue to let the sector continue to thrive in the future. So Dr. Cox, I want to come to you straight off the bat. What are some of the things that you're looking at to encourage young people to see fisheries and the fishing industry as a viable career option and as a viable job opportunity to feed themselves and their families?
Well, good night, Shane, and good night to everyone listening. Good night, Barbados. And thanks for having us on again this week. As it relates to youth engagement, one of our initiatives called DigiFish was our attempt at trying to attract the youth with digital technologies. So I would have presented at a Ministry of Youth Affairs workshop, Youth Employability workshop last year, and was able to demonstrate how a tracker device on a vessel actually tracks the movement and location in real time, and the type of data insights that we could get from seeing what fishing grounds they frequent, how often they were visiting the fish aggregating devices, what particular areas they spent more hours in, how far they were going, how long they were staying out. So it was really fascinating to see their faces when they saw the vessel, leaving the south, going as far up as the point of St. Philip. And I think that people don't understand how far fishers are really going in, some of the smaller vessels. But that technology, they saw it cool. They saw, how coding could support an initiative like Fisheries. They saw that, IT-related type jobs can also be sector specific. And
Right.
then, even developing the devices, the hardware itself, it's solar powered. So there was that renewable technology application as well. So no longer were they seeing it as something traditional, but they were seeing the opportunities for technologies. And,
Yeah.
that is an attraction.
Yeah, so you got their
So,
attention
so
there with that. But
yes,
how,
yes.
when you look at the percentages involved now, I don't know if you've been able to do an analysis just yet on the youth involvement in this sector. What percentage are you seeing? Because I think, I mean, when you go to the fish market, when you go to the boats, you see a similar picture. Mature men and women who have been involved in this sector for 10, 20, and 30 years, they're really running the ship.
Yes, and this is something we speak about quite often. A lot of our longline captains, especially that target the yellowfin tunas, are 50 and over. And it's quite concerning, especially as we discuss succession planning and engaging youth. I mean, we don't have specific stats, but we know that youth involved in the fishing industry right now is a bit low. And it's usually when it's related to a fishing family. So, your grandfather passed it down to your father, and then, your uncles may pass on that traditional knowledge and skill to you, and, you stay in the industry. But to say somebody from maybe even an inland parish might not be attracted. So it goes to the fact of engaging and making those careers attractive. We want to engage with schools this week. We've been discussing an open day at the Fisheries Division just to have the students in. Our fisher folk have gone to schools in the past. There have been some tours in the market as well. But these initiatives were a bit ad hoc. So we really have to get a comprehensive youth engagement program. We've been talking for years about applying, some of these skills like networking into the syllabus as well, and integrating that. I went to Japan last year at the end of the year, and there was actually a secondary school that was just marine sciences. So part of the school had an engine lab, another a processing hall. I don't know if we're going to get there. We've heard some discussions around specialized high schools, but that, of course, was a good demonstration of trying to, engage the youth from early so they're
Yeah.
exposed to the marine sciences. So we have, some ideas and trying to, work on that open day, get them into fisheries. Even, we have at Fisheries these large tractors that we use with haul out, and the engineering aspects as well of hauling out a boat, and quite interesting things that I think a lot of people don't know of. And then
Yeah.
putting some spotlights on some of our younger longline captains. There are a few from Silver Sands as well as College Savannah, and these guys are, in their early 30s, some in their late 20s as well, being
Okay.
stewards of $500,000 vessels, doing very well. So I think putting a spotlight on them to, have an idea of what the youth could aspire to be.
Yeah, that's encouraging. That's encouraging that you have some 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds involved in the sector. We have a phone call already. I wanted to go to Augustine to talk to him about what he thinks needs to be done to encourage the youth to be involved in the sector. But let's go to the phone line first and get some of our viewer engagement. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your to be involved in the sector? But let's go to the phone line first and get some of our viewer engagement. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.
My question is that, first of all, I see a lot of youngsters now doing longline fishing with a guy called Mr. Buffett, right? And that is very good. We need some more youngsters in the fishing industry. We need a lot, because a lot of guys old and dropping out now. Number two, you got a facility coming up now to haul up boats and stuff, and that is very interesting. And number three, these fish, the sargasso moss ain't really carry the fish, because the tide changed, and the tide left for east, the fish gone as far as Japan. The fish gone as far as Japan, and the fish come off the coast of Africa, and it was coming down down to Barbados for over 50 years, but it just changed. So warning you to get their boats fishing, you don't got much their boats fishing because all the majority ice boat captains in doing ice boat, their boat captains doing ice boat fishing now, and you don't got very much their boats to fish. Number three, we had a thing going in the port for getting duty-free fuel, right, and it shut down everything. So the boat owners and things and the captains had to go down to St. Vincent to buy fuel. Because the city fuel up here is very expensive. And then they go down to St. Vincent, buy fuel, and they go out fishing from St. Vincent. Even boats come as far as from Trinidad and Venezuela to go to St. Vincent, buy fuel, which is cheap. I would like to see something done about that because when you put expenses in a boat, say it's 10,000, 15,000, 8,000, and you go, and then you have to come back and pay for the fuel, very, very expensive. So I would like to see something done about that. I done a program at the Polytechnic called the Fish and Vessel Operation. Now it's Maritime Marine years ago. And I think they need to get the fishermen to do some of that, but we will have to find a way for them to do it because they ain't going to do it in the fishing season. I stopped fishing, I went and done it and get through very well. Know about outboard engines, diesel engines, had my job assignment at the Coast Guard. And I stopped fishing and went back to work, but I ain't working anymore, so I would like to get a little hot more about things really tight now because when we first started to fish, we would go and hold a fish, start the fish evening, night, you fill up and come up, but now you got to wait long. You got to wait very long to hold a fish now. So I hope that the fish come back on the course, and the prices are very high now because you can't do no better. You know what I mean? Because I need to spend a long time, and you don't hold nothing. You just cover the expense. It's up to the board owner now to give you a little something, but I would like to see a lot of things done. And number four, we have some of the youngsters now paying national insurance, which is very good because you fish all day, you fish all year, and when you get older, you go do a watchman job, and you ain't getting the national insurance. So one or two of the guys now encouraging the youngsters to join the national insurance, which should be good, and they will get something when they finish fishing. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, caller. I mean, I'm figuring that those on the line know who they're speaking to because in the fishing industry, you are closely knit. Maybe you would like to give your name? I think he's gone now.
He's gone already. Okay. Yeah, he mentioned, Everton Brathwaite, who we were trying to get on last week and left yesterday. So he's missed again tonight. Yes, he for sure has been doing a lot in terms of succession planning and training, upcoming longline captains. So yeah, we miss him online tonight, but hopefully he will give us the opportunity to come again in the future.
Yes, for sure, because I mean there's so many things that he mentioned here that we need to thrash out, and it would be good to thrash out tonight too. But let's focus on the youth because we're going to get back to some of his comments and questions and let Augustine get in here because he has 3 young boys, and I'm pretty sure that he will be trying to encourage them to be a part of the fishing industry as well. You do a number of things. You're not only the managing director of Just Fish, you're a boat owner as well, and you do a bit of fishing too. So what do you think needs to be done to encourage some of these young men and women to become a part of the sector, going out, handling some of those long line boats, as Dr. Cox mentioned, and other areas, other job opportunities which are on offer in the fishing sector?
Good night to you, Shane, and good night to the panel and everybody listening. When it comes to the youth, we're trying to take this here real serious because the youth is our future in any area. We need the youth to be a part of everything. And when it comes to fishery, as Dr. Cox said, we did some programs where we would bring the students into the fishing complex and we show them boners, people filleting fish, and we take them down the back, we show them the boats, etc. And that is something that we want to continue to focus on. Dr. Cox made a very, very good point there where she said we want to get into the ministry, into the schools where we could form. It's a process that we have to do. It's going to take time, but we're going to try to attack that area where we could form alliance with fisheries and the Ministry of Education in terms of getting a program going where we could introduce students in the early into fishing, boning, equipment, etc. And that's something that we want to do. We got a lot of young people, and it's not only in 20. There got a couple of youngsters that are board captains that I believe around 19 years old right now. And that is something wonderful. I really, really say that is something wonderful because, as the gentleman was saying on the call just now, the boat fishermen, they are doing long lining now, some to the point where they had to resign and they can't kill. And the fish right now is coming, the fish used to come real close into Barbados waters, but now you gotta go miles to get the flying fish. And we need people, younger people, to come and take up this because we don't want the industry to die. Because if the industry
Definitely
die,
not.
if we don't get the young people, we don't get the young people now, and people like me, myself, in this industry, decide, for God forbid, get sick or get injured and they can't work anymore, then you don't have nobody to replace me to do the job. So it's gonna die, and we don't want that. So we
Indeed.
try in all sorts of areas. And as I mentioned before, we did the boat building exercises we'll be working on. Then along the line, we want to do the navigating. And I had some talks with some people last week, and one of the programs is that I was putting some things in motion that I could sponsor at least. I would start off about 4 young students or so in terms of coming and learn the fishing industry, learning how to bone, etc. Because boning and dealing with fish help enough of these elders that we have to build their houses, feed the children for years, for
Yeah.
many years before I come. And we want to invest into the children. So I'm looking to invest. I got to talk to people in terms of getting it due, but I want to invest in a couple people in terms, a couple children, younger children, going into adults, in terms of sponsoring them to come and learn what's necessary.
Indeed. Okay, so we're going to discuss this a bit more. We're going to take a quick break and come back and get Henderson Inniss, his comments on getting youth involved as well in the fisheries industry. But we're talking about fisheries tonight. Again, the state of the industry, the way forward. We will be back in a few moments. We continue our conversations on the fisheries industry, and we go directly to the phone lines as we have callers waiting. So good night. Welcome to the People's Business Caller. What's your question or comment?
Good night.
Good night.
Yes, am I on?
You are on. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. I was listening to, what proceeded and, talking about the youth joining the fishing industry. But what I would like to say, I want to draw your attention to about 15 years ago, I worked for a statutory corporation, and we had an interest in the fishing industry. And we did a study on the fishing industry to see, the type of persons who are involved in terms of the ages and so on. And out of that exercise, we came up with a proposal for the justification and implementation of a maritime apprenticeship training program in captaining and fishing long-line vessels, ice and day boat. And as a result of that study, we met with the with the Fisheries division, and put the proposals to them. And as a result, we took an exploration mission to the Marine Institute in Newfoundland to look at what they were doing to revive their industry and to improve it. And we recognize well that out of that study, we came up with about 7 objectives. In fact, we found that in Newfoundland, they had an apprenticeship training program for training apprentices. And in fact, they call their apprenticeship program, they don't call them fishermen, they call them professional fish harvesters. So they had an apprenticeship program in which the youngster started off as a fish harvester, apprentice fish harvester. Then he moved to a level 1 professional fish harvester and a level 2 professional fish harvester. So what I would like to say is that, and I mean, I talking about 12 years ago, and on that mission, the ministry was represented by the chief fishery officer, as well as the head of Bar Newfort. And somehow, for some reason, nobody never took it on. But it was aimed directly at getting the youth into the fishing industry, because in the study it showed that a number of the fishermen were aging, and there weren't many young people, following on to keep the industry going. So what I would like to say, I could recommend to the ministry is that they contact the Barbados Vocational Training Board and get a look at that program.
Well, thank you, caller, for your suggestion and your comment. We appreciate your time. So that is an option as well, the Barbados Vocational Training Board, I will think, creating some kind of course or some kind of production with them for young people to get the youth involved as well.
Yeah, there's actually, perhaps that was the impetus of the National Vocation Qualifications for the Fishing Operations course, which was piloted a couple of years ago, and we have already started discussions with the Barbados Coast Guard about delivering that course this year. We had started last year, but it wasn't successful. But there is now an NVQ and some discussions at making it a Caribbean vocational qualification. So there was, in fact, a pilot, and Mr. Brathwaite and Wayne Rose, another longline captain, were actually tutors on this course. They took the young students just not too far offshore, but were able to demonstrate the longline fishing gear and, how to use it. So I want to say thank you for your intervention back then, but it has led to something. And we are engaging with Vocational Training Board right now as it relates to the boat building, repair course. So I think that this is a start of a good collaboration for the Fisheries Division and the Vocational Training Board, and even TVET Council as well.
A step in the right direction indeed. I want to get Henderson's comments now, his thoughts, because Henderson, you are a boat owner, and of course you've been in the business for quite some time. Maybe you should be a part of helping train some of these youngsters, hopefully more interested after hearing from their peers or their parents or friends of friends, about the opportunities in the fishing industry despite the challenges. What are your thoughts about getting or how to capture the attention of young people in fisheries?
Good night, Shane. Good night to panel, and good night, Barbados. No, some time ago, we recommend that we go, as Dr. Cox said, that we go to the schools and do some legwork. So I went to several schools, some secondary, some primary. But I was able to explain, and the students were very attentive. They showed some interest. No, but that's one way of looking at it. I could work on that way. But right now, we need engineers. The few engineers that is down in the complex, down in Barbados, is not enough, and most of them aging. So we need to have some new engineers, young engineers. We have to have electronic engineers too, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and electronic engineers. These are viable areas. We have to have boat builders. Because in fact, the movie we are from wood now to fiberglass. So we need boat builders.
Right.
And there's other opportunities, for example, just as Justin said, he's a managing director of a company. I do have a company too. And you can make money, you can be an entrepreneur, buy fish, sell fish. Also, there's other opportunities for exporting fish. The tuners. There's only one person right now in Barbados that export tuners. I used to export tuners some time ago.
Right.
So we need to have that. And it's very, very good. So we got opportunities for people to develop. Now, I agree with Dr. Cox and Justin about the programs that we started. Every year, Barbados National Fishery Organization, they do training for guys that could see, captains. And recently we had discussions with Coast Guard, Barbados Coast Guard, that we put on a course to have some further training, even making you a greater captain. So those are the things that we are doing right now to encourage the youth.
Going on that point, Dr. Cox, maybe you can tell us about some of the areas where there are job shortages, where there's a need for personnel in the fisheries industry. What are some of those areas?
Sure. I know Mr. Inniss would have touched on some, especially as it relates to the engineers, but marine mechanics as well. There are not many marine mechanics to, fix the engines, especially now that some of our boats have computerized engines and they're quite sensitive. I think another area that is missing, besides saying get, the boat agents, which I realize we're seeing more women being involved as boat agents. So it's more or less somebody that coordinates the preparation of the boat, liaise with the captains and the boat owners. So that's really an opportunity. It's almost like coordination and management. A lot of the small business owners or boat owners do their own books. So for somebody to be able to provide that service, to help persons audit their accounts and finances around that. We've been talking about training as well. We did do a basic bookkeeping last year online, but we would really like to deliver a training around basic bookkeeping too. I think we've seen as well data scientists. Right now, internally, we're looking to build out our fisheries information system some more, and to be able to integrate things like artificial intelligence and deep machine learning, where we could use the latest technologies to help us draw data insights from different types of data. That gets me excited because I like the data, because the data supports some of our management decisions. And then, even to capture, geospatial type analyses. So there are some people who now specialize in geographic information systems as well. How do we map the locations of fish? Which areas are being frequented more, but which areas are we seeing more search and rescues being targeted, even as it relates to maritime security as well.
Right.
So lots of specialized areas and niche areas that could be quite attractive.
And we're going to talk about another area that is popping up and becoming a bit more popular right here in Barbados. I've seen it for myself. Fish farming. A lot of people are getting into fish farming. Of course, that is done on land, so we'll get that into the conversation as we look at the fisheries industry, the state of it, and the way forward. We'll be back in a few moments. This is part 2 of the fisheries discussion, and we are here with Dr. Shelly-Ann Cox, the Chief Fisheries Officer, Henderson Inniss, a boat owner, and Augustine Forde, the Managing Director of Just Fish. And we've been talking about a number of things, about getting the youth involved and the plans in that regard. There is something else that is becoming very, very popular in the fishing industry. We heard the Minister mention plans for it as well. Fish farming. He mentioned fish farming in terms of developing shrimp and some developments in that regard. And there are other fish farming projects right across Barbados. So, Dr. Cox, I want to come back to you on this topic. But before we go to that topic, let's get another caller in here. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Yeah, good night. I want to make a suggestion. Some years ago, we had a shrimp industry in Barbados that was based here. But Barbados today, in late 1990s, Barbados was awarded 58,000 square miles of the Atlantic Ocean in that fishing deal with Trinidad and Tobago, the International Court of Arbitration. And then we've got the Atlantic Ocean 100 miles east of Barbados, belongs to Barbados by somewhere. Literally, I feel we have about 100,000 square miles up there. Let the Invest Barbados Corporation, the old BIDC, be tasked with the responsibility of finding 3 international trawler companies to do fishing based here in Barbados. I would think that would significantly impact positively on our economy.
Well, Dr. Cox, thank you so much, caller. Dr. Cox, let's get your thoughts on that, welcoming international trawler companies to ply their trade in our waters to increase our fish catches.
Especially when we know that the Taiwanese trawlers are kind of already out there. And it has raised some concerns with interactions as well, Venezuelans out at sea. Some reports of death as well. I mean, what he raises is good in terms of expanding the development, but they are already out there. And of course, when some of these trawlers do, take a lot, what happens is that our smaller fleet wouldn't be able to get the amount of tuna resources that they can. But I know that we need to explore some of these collaborations, but the reality is that there are already, quite a few trawlers out there in our marine space, in the high seas. So these are areas that need to be discussed going ahead with several different stakeholders. But, we are, engaging with foreign affairs to get the best advice necessary.
You said that, you just mentioned there are trawlers already in our seas, in our waters. doing their fish catches. Can you tell us a bit more about that? What exactly happens there, and is there a level of cooperation yet, or are they doing their own thing and Barbados is not benefiting from that? What's happening there?
They're doing their own thing, and you know, it's evident to the type of fishing they're doing. They're releasing what we refer to as floating fish aggregating devices. So several fishermen, and I've seen some for myself, would have seen these washed up on the East Coast as well. So we know that people are already fishing in our waters. You know, we can see it on Marine Traffic, which is one of the online applications that show you the presence of and locations of larger vessels that have the AIS on board. And, you know, it brings the issue of not only theft and, well, for instance, our Grenadians have, you know, had very serious interactions with others out at sea. And it brings great concern because not only are the guys pretty far from home, but they're also exposed. I don't want to call it to piracy, but they're also exposed to unsafe environments. And it raised the importance of, you know, bilateral agreements, discussions on fishing agreements, us restarting that conversation with Trinidad and Tobago, for example. And hopefully it doesn't become a response to a crisis. And it really raises the issue about how we go forward negotiating and setting up these bilateral, multilateral arrangements that are needed for fisheries going forward.
Is what these trawler companies doing legal? Is it legal or?
It's not legal to fish in somebody's exclusive.
No, I just wanted to be clear.
So,
I just wanted clarity on that.
I know, but some will say it's not legal on our end as well. These are very sensitive discussions, and you know, I don't want to evade the questions, but it is the reality of what we're dealing with. I mean, I was kind of disheartened when one of my younger captains did tell me that he was at sea and a Venezuelan boat took 7 tunas off his line, and when they hauled back in the line, they could see the red gloves on it. And I was, you know, very concerned because thankfully they weren't close enough. Actually, interaction, but it's quite scary. He proceeded to tell me there was another report of one of them that got one of their beepers, one of the equipments they use on the line equipment, that it was stolen. So this is really the reality, and Grenadians have faced worse. But those 2 reports have raised some concern, and we were talking with Coast Guard and colleagues from the regional security system on this quite recently.
That's where I was going next. That's where I was going to go next. Is the Coast Guard aware of this situation, and what are they doing to address it?
Yeah, so I was advised that the captain at the time should have radioed it in, but he did tell me that he was quite shaken up, and at the time he wanted to get back to speak to me about what was the procedure to do it. So when he does return, he will go to Coast Guard to make an official report. And, you know, we had heard about reports with the Grenadians, but never was actually reported by a Bajan captain. So we need to be on the alert.
Yeah. Well, let me ask Henderson then, because he's on the seas as well. Henderson, have you ever had this kind of interaction?
Well, not me personally, but my boat, a couple of years ago, almost got cut down by a ship in the middle of the night. And that ship didn't stop. He continued going, although we tried to signal him. And all he do is put on some bright lights that you can and you can see his identification on the ship. So then you can all you could do is complain, and it cost me $7,000 to repair the boat, and the ship went long.
Wow!
Although we had all the indicators up on the mast pole.
Well, we really hope that these are matters that can be addressed with haste. As you said, the Coast Guard is aware. Dr. Cox there said the Coast Guard is aware, and we hope that in the future that we can sort out some of these issues. These are things that we don't want to hear happening to our fishermen while they're out there, risking their lives to ensure that there's a level of food security as far as fisheries is concerned. Augustine, what are your thoughts on this? And as I say that, I'm hearing we have another phone call on the line. Good night, caller. Let's welcome them in. Good night, caller. Welcome to the People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Well, my comment is, I was associated with Barnofo for a number of years, and we at Barnofo had recognized the need for encouraging the young people to get interested in the fishing industry. We had meetings with the Ministry of Education with the possibility of having things like fishing and building nets, etc., incorporated into the curriculum at school. Because if we are thinking in terms of get a flying fish, the people who are working there have to know how to repair nets, how to build nets, etc., etc. So we had looked at that possibility and those probabilities. We had also visited not only schools but all of the fishing sites to get fishermen and people associated with the fishing industry interested in this apprenticeship type program that an earlier caller spoke about, in terms of because in Canada and those places, the apprentices go from being an apprentice to eventually getting their program as masters of the fishing vessel. And we had explored those possibilities and probabilities, but then you had the entry of COVID, which had an effect on those programs. But every year, Barnofo used to have training programs for fishermen, incorporating navigation, bit of engineering, and so on. So that it just requires an expansion of that. COVID put a halt on a lot of those programs. Now that Ms. Cox is now fisheries officer, we have a young person there in her who is now chief fisheries officer. So the younger people are getting more involved at this stage.
And we hope that we see that trend continue. Thank you so much, caller, for your comment there. Let me go to Augustine now. Augustine, what are your thoughts on what happens on the high seas with some of these foreign vessels in our waters and the interaction that can happen?
Yes, Shane. This is a very, very, very sticky topic, because from the stories that I've heard other fishermen talk to me about, some serious things that's happened in the water. There was a point where some boats drift into other waters. I don't want to go into details, call out names of the countries, but they went into there and they were robbed and locked into the ISO. Yeah, so every day is a risk, and it is good that these things could come up tonight, that people could get an idea of what fishermen really go through going up there, because people just see the fish. That's it. They landing. People come and they say, well, what they got fresh? What come into there? That's the end of it. But it's good when people can understand what goes on behind the scenes out there in the sea. And every time a fisherman leaves, I said this all the time, every time a fisherman leaves any island at all to go in the ocean, it is a risk. There's a chance that they might not even come back. And we've seen this happen. We lost so much fishermen last year. Up to now, I don't even think that some of them bodies get recovered yet.
Wow.
And this is something that happens out in the ocean. And to speak on the topic with Ms. Cox and the pirates do exist.
Yeah.
there is a business out there for pirates. There's a case where one country was shipping shrimp from another country, and in the middle of that delivery, the movement, the shrimp vessel got hijacked. Shrimp was taken off to sell on the black market. So these things do exist.
Well, I'm glad that all of you could shed some light on some of these challenges that you all face on the high sea, because as you rightly said, Augustine, people just see the fish. People just see the high prices, but don't understand the challenges that you have to meet to get those fish here to us for our consumption. So that's something that I'm glad that you highlighted on tonight's edition of The People's Business. When we come back, we'll take a quick break here again. I just want to spend a few minutes on talking about developments in fish farming, because we didn't touch that as yet. So we'll take a break and be back. We have roughly 10 minutes or so to spend with you on The People's Business as we get more on these developments happening in fisheries. We talk about the state of the industry and the way forward with Dr. Cox, Henderson Inniss, and Augustine Forde, all stakeholders in the sector. Dr. Cox, I want to shed a spotlight very quickly on fish farming. But before we do that, the calls are coming in very swiftly. So let's go to the phone line very quickly and let's hear from them. Good night, caller. Welcome to The People's Business. What's your question or comment?
Good night. I was listening.
Good night.
I was good night to the viewers and to your panel. I was listening last week in terms of the expenses that some of your boat owner and your business owner would incur. My question is, and again, Mr. Inniss highlighted that he had an expense where that he was not able to recover. In terms of financial assistance, what financial assistance as entrepreneurs and small businesses are out there for you of these expenses that you will incur? And I think besides the manager of Just Fish, I think it was a great initiative on your part to have, in planning, to have some interns I'm hoping it will be this summer, to help boost the youth within the fishing industry. I think it is a great initiative. But in terms of covering your expenses, because I remember last week, Mr. Inniss highlighted, not Mr. Inniss, Miss Nicholls highlighted that some expenses can run y'all into over $21,000 for one trip. What assistance is there for you?
Henderson, any assistance on your end? Would you be able to receive, or have you sought out any assistance financially to help you in the running of your business?
Well, let me start from way back. Getting insurance in Barbados for a boat is very expensive, much more than your house will cost. for a whole year. So the insurance can run you up to $10,000, depends on the size of the boat. Maybe 15,000, all depends on the size of the boat. However, there are much boats in Barbados that got insurance because of the cost to insure a boat. Now, that was a niggling discussion that we had with insurance companies, promised to do something, but you see, when you leave the shore, you're uncertain if you're coming back. But I did draw the insurance company that they spend a lot more money on cars, repairing cars, than a boat. Very few boats ever call for insurance to pay out. Because one, they got it, and two, that they're hardly getting any loss of life, hardly any loss of boats or damaged boats. So we fishermen most of the time is left on our own. So that is a problem there.
Okay, Augustine, well, let me hear from Augustine very quickly then. What in terms of financial assistance, because you have a business in a number of areas, is there any financial assistance that you would say is on offer for you to help you develop and really let your business fly?
Well, Shane, recently I've been in conversations with some people that come from overseas, Trinidad especially, and I believe St. Vincent, in terms of getting this same. So it's amazing how this topic come up, because they're trying to find a way that fishermen's, boat owners, and small business people in industry can get those funds. So that is something we're working on right now. We had talks with them. They're going to continue to do their survey and see if they're going on the behalf of us in terms of getting the banks to give us loans to further our mission in getting the youth involved and to strengthen the industry and to strengthen our business as well. So we're working on that right now. But there's nothing right there right now that is solid right now, because it's very difficult for us to get any funding. And I want to touch this before we shut off. I want that the fishing industry, Ms. Cox and Vernel and Mr. Inniss and the other people on board, to get more into the media. We need to spread this here, not just only through the people's business. We need to do more in Barbados. We need to open it up more, expose people to what really goes on in the industry. And I think that would help a lot in terms of investment, because people need to know what is going on in order for them to say, you know what, let me put some money into the fishing industry, because there is a business there.
Indeed. Dr. Cox, are you doing anything in the ministry as Chief Fisheries Officer to encourage that discussion in terms of more support, financial support for those stakeholders, and especially on the insurance side of things? Hopefully bringing down the cost, because $10,000 and $15,000, that's pretty pricey.
It's very high. Yeah, it's very high. Well, Augustine spoke about the collaboration with ICA and their Fisher Folk Strengthening and Access to Finances project that they are rolling out this month. So we have been collaborating with them to provide contact information for fisher folk, and they're hoping to set up a session, I believe, later this week. So we are collaborating, but as it relates to the insurance, there was some update to some legislation around third-party liability, which will hopefully get us to be able to access some lower premiums. We have had discussions. It was a interesting, I would say a crazy idea of mine, that if we do outfit the whole fleet with vessel tracking devices, that we can probably have our own pay per use vessel insurance premiums. You know, they have tried it on cars, and you know, that data that they use actually will feed into your premium. And we want to convince them that some of the smaller vessels aren't going that far offshore, and the risk is less. so that the smaller vessels can pay lower premiums. So this is a discussion that we want to take further this year, as well as some discussions we've been having around parametric insurance at the regional level. CRIFT, this is the Caribbean Catastrophe Insurance Facility. They have been rolling out parametric insurance called COAST. And when they say parametric insurance, is tied into, you know, a particular level of precipitation or rain or a level of wind, and once a system passes and those thresholds are passed, then they give out payouts. And they would have piloted this in St. Lucia and Grenada, and we're hoping that we can bring that project here as well. They're interested in rolling out COAST in Barbados. So a few interesting projects on the horizon.
Well, listen, there's a lot of work to be done, and of course we will spend some time here on the People's Business in the near future talking a bit more about what needs to be done. We didn't get into fish farming tonight, so that's something that we can talk about on the next edition, not on the next edition of People's Business, but the next time we have our fisher folk here on the program to discuss the fisheries industry, the state of it, and the way forward. I really want to thank you for spending time with us, Dr. Cox, Mr. Inniss, and of course Mr. Forde. And I want to thank you viewers for tuning in to another edition of the People's Business. A lot of calls coming in, even on this Super Bowl Sunday. But we thank you for spending time with us. I'm Shane Seeley. Good night until next time.